soundtrack. Told y'all to run the movie. Told y'all I'm gonna show y'all how to clean your dirty money up with good money. Invest into yourself. You heard? My partner gave me $50, put me in the game. I've been slinging weed.
This is the I'm Kinda Famous podcast. I'm your host, Lester Rowe. New week, new episode. For new episodes, because this is a mental health week, awareness month thing. For Mental Health Awareness Month, we're going to do the Mental Health Awareness Week on the I'm Kinda Famous podcast. So what that means, we're going to do a full week of shows based around mental health and recognizing some of that stuff. But before we go too far, we're going to get these plugs in. So iTunes, Google Music, Podbean, SoundCloud, everywhere that you can go listen to the I'm Kinda Famous podcast. Or anywhere that you listen to podcasts or stream podcasts, we likely got a show there. So just look it up. If I don't know if this is not, however you listening now is not convenient, you can tell a friend to go listen to any other way, and it's there. Make sure you subscribe, like, share, tell a friend, because I want this week to be a lot different than every other week. I want to make sure that everyone who can get to it gets to it. Don't forget to also go to the I'm Kinda Famous Facebook and Twitter pages. Kinda Famous Pod, KINDA Famous Pod, POD, on Facebook and Twitter. Facebook is where all the conversation should and will be happening. Anything that's relevant to today's show, I'll link it there so that it's easy to find. Also, aRowe Films, aRoweFilms.com, AROWE Films.com. That's my personal website. That's where you can go look at everything that I've made, what I'm working on, what I'm up to, and just get the direct link to watching the films and some of the photography stuff. And also where you can go to get a direct link to the Redbubble for them clean-ass People Collector t-shirts. Now, we also, in the Mental Health Awareness Week of the I'm Kinda Famous podcast, we got a few supporters here. I'm going to start off with a big one, Talkspace Counseling and Therapy. Talkspace is an app that you can also use on the computer as well. It's online therapy that's affordable, convenient, and anonymous. Plan starts as low as $32 a week. All therapists are thoroughly reviewed and verified. Now, this is an unlimited on-demand therapy and counseling program with licensed therapists for your Android or Apple device, or like I said, online. It's made for you to use things the way people use it today. So you can get private, anonymous help for depression, anxiety, stress, and whatever else could be an issue for you, even if it's as simple as a job interview. All right. So it's an on-demand, unlimited messaging therapy service that allows you to message with a dedicated therapist anytime, anywhere, without fear of judgment and criticism. So you can get matched with many therapists, and you can start a consultation as well. It's $32 a week. Now, it's not made for people 18 and under, or under 18 and plus service. So, you know, and that's if you're dealing with something and you're underage, you might want to seek out another direction, and maybe we'll be able to help you on today's episode. And it also isn't a suicide hotline. If you need help for something like that, or you know someone who may need help for something like that, 1-800-273-8255 is the suicide hotline. All right. Now, we also got Main Dame who's supporting this. Main Dame magazine is a lifestyle magazine right here in Wichita, Kansas. That's MANEDAMEMAG.com. Shouts out to Autumn on that. Now we can get into the episode. Mental Health Awareness Month of May. It's an important one to me. I know a lot of people that deal with mental health issues, such as, I know a lot of people who fight suicide, wanting to kill themselves for whatever reason, and sometimes they reach out to me for that conversation. Sometimes I found out after the fact that they were either successful or not. But you know, I being an entertainer, I know a lot of entertainers that just struggle with that sort of thing. Today's episode, I wanted to make sure I start this whole week out right. And we're going to start it professionally. with a mental health professional. So on today's show, I have Brandi Newry, who is like one of maybe 17 Newrys in the United States. So how you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm all right. You can laugh. I'm funny. So I brought Brandi on. I was referred to her. I don't really know how we crossed paths, but I crossed paths with her through a friend of mine, Julian, who I previously worked with, and who also is responsible for introducing me to David Rickles. He made this happen, I guess, in some way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, and so here he is again, coming through in the clutch when I need him, and brought me a mental health professional. Now, that's a very vague term, so I'm going to let you tell me exactly what it is that you currently do and your credentials in the mental health world.
Okay. Well, for the most part, my job title is a school psychologist, and that means that I am licensed and or certified to work with people ages 3 up to 21. Most of the students or people I work with are in a school setting, and I do some things with regard to special education and other things more on the general education side, where I just try to figure out how mental health plays into student learning, and how we can make kids successful in a school setting. Again, ages 3 up to 21, how they can be successful in a school setting despite any disability they might have.
So, what would be, I guess, your formal training?
Okay. Well, I have a undergraduate degree in in psychology, and then I went to graduate school and did some grad work for about 4 years, and I have a specialist degree in school psychology.
All right. So, studying, and you say, where did you go?
Undergrad, I went to Wichita State, and then graduate school, I went to Oklahoma State.
And at Wichita State, you studied psychology.
Psychology, right.
Now, studying psychology, I imagine that you had to have a lot of friends that always wanted to talk to you and say, let me ask you something. Now, how do you deal with that? What you learning stuff? Actually, let me back up. What made you want to go into psychology?
When I was a senior in high school, I took a psychology class at the high school I went to, and my teacher was pretty amazing, and I liked the way he spun it to us as seniors in high school, and I was sold.
Well, get a teacher a shout out, man. We gotta make sure these teachers get their credit.
Mr. Steve Woodman, he has since retired from Heights High School, but he was the bomb. And if anybody knows Mr. Woodman, he was one of the coolest teachers at Heights High School. Yeah,
need some listeners. Yeah, I mean, teachers are everything. I think those are the people we need to also thank for their service, as well as the military men and women. Gotta make sure these teachers get the credit that they deserve too. These educators. So with that, when you're in college, you're studying, you got these big psychology books. Is that Freud that people always like to run to?
It's a theory, yes.
All right. Well, so how is it having friends and everything who always want to, or did you have friends that always want to come to you and talk about their problems?
Not particularly. What I find is that I have friends that come to me about their children, and whether I think they're advanced or if they're quote unquote normal, and or I share that information with them unsolicited. But usually it's on the positive side. I usually let my friends know that their babies are smart and intelligent and showing all the appropriate developmental signs.
But you don't never every now and again go, man, you gotta get them badass kids.
Not to their face.
Oh, you don't do that unsolicited. You gonna tell a friend, man, you know, Kendra kids is bad.
No, that's usually a very private conversation.
I don't know why we do it anyway.
No,
You're
we
like,
do.
You know, your kids is bad, man. You gotta take care of them kids. Give them a whooping.
You're right. I have had one friend that has come to me about her child, and he was displaying some behavior in the school setting. So she asked me, and I gave her my opinion. But the thing about being, uh, a psychologist or a mental health professional or educate, whatever you want to call it, you have to be very careful about what you tell people, even if they ask you, because they know you personally, but then they ask for a professional opinion. But then you give them that professional opinion, they're not always happy about what
Right.
you've had to say about what they're experiencing. So you have to be very careful. And I've kind of said, okay, you understand what you're asking me.
Yeah.
So
Now, do you find that more people want to find out if their kids are exceptional or if their kids are like on the road to the wrong direction?
they absolutely want to know if their child is exceptional, not so much if their child is struggling.
Some of these kids out here struggling. That's what we're gonna talk a little a bit about today. But I want to put this out first. What is your nationality? What would you classify yourself?
Blindsiding me. Well, technically, I am half African American and I am half Mexican. My mother is Mexican and my dad is African American.
Okay. Now, the reason I want to put this out here because I know a lot of the direction I'm going to go is going to be based in minorities. The black neighborhoods, the minority neighborhoods, the urban environments. So because I know I'm gonna ask questions that's gonna be relative to just your experience growing up, all the way into the things that you kind of may take with you as a professional, and maybe even relating with people. Some of it may be relevant, some of it may not. We're gonna find out today on the I'm Kind of Famous podcast on Mental Health Awareness Week. All right, that pregnant pause is me thinking. What? Okay, what are some of the biggest challenges that you find that people, or I guess more specifically, the people in the range that you cover from? You said pre-K,
3
3
up
to
21.
21.
Mhm.
What are the biggest challenges that you are finding today that those people are having with development? I want to say mental health development, even if it's good health, bad health, whatever it is. What is the biggest challenge that I guess what I want to put out there is what can be considered a normal challenge right now versus something abnormal?
So a normal challenge. What I see a lot in the people that I work with, students and their parents, because when you're working with people who are ages 3 to 21, many or most of the time, you're working with their parents. So you get the big picture of how this sixth grader ended up this way, or how this senior ended up this way. And I would say the biggest challenge and what's kind of normal now, which is somewhat unfortunate, is that a lot of these young people don't have really good coping mechanisms. They don't know how to handle conflict, kind of maybe within themselves. They don't know how to handle conflict with an authority figure or with a peer. They don't know how to handle it. And so they typically just fly off the handle, and that can look like that can be a very aggressive event. It could be them ransacking a classroom. It could be them running out of a classroom, leaving a classroom without permission. And older students, you're going to get cussed out. Those are the kinds of things that I see, but that's all a result of there's no coping mechanism. They haven't been taught how to deal with conflict.
Where would somebody develop coping mechanisms?
From a parent.
Okay.
Most likely. We at school, we can't teach them everything. There's 7.5 hours in a school day. and unfortunately we're having to do a lot with students from 8 to 3, so we would like to see them learn some of these things from their parents.
Now, my one of my big respects that I have for educators is, like you said, seven. You said 7.5 hours roughly. Is that a lot of times, if you really kind of take those 7.5 hours, what school gets out of 3-4 o'clock, something like that. All right, so then they go home and they're really spending more time with their educator than they are with their parent.
Right.
So, see, it's weird. I grew up with is it called corporal punishment? We got paddled.
Right.
We went to the dean, and the dean swung the paddle. So, and it was also the deal of, if you act up here, you're gonna get in trouble at home. This whole deal. Is there is part of the problem with developing coping mechanism is just the inability to discipline kids the way?
So basically, they need whoopings.
I don't know. I'm asking you. You're the professional. I got whoopings.
What? In my experience, and then I would assume most likely in yours, that the discipline came with some home training as well.
Home training.
So we weren't just being whooped. We, on the other side of that, was someone teaching us manners and how to deal with situations and social skills and how to respect authority. And so we weren't there. It wasn't one-sided. There were two dynamics at play. For me, at least. I don't. Maybe not you.
No,
but
yeah,
for me as well.
I believe in the village. And the school was a part of the village. Like, it wasn't like, what happened at school was that separated from what happened at home. The same things that my mom tell me to listen to this teacher, because the teacher was basically the handoff authority for that 7.5 hours. For me, after school, I went to the rec center, which was a whole nother thing of authority there. So it was always, it felt like more of a chain of command. The people knew my parents. I mean, it was hand in hand. I feel like they worked together to give me whoopings. So it was just I want to say terrifying. Probably wasn't terrifying. It was home training. See, but I don't know where I would have got coping mechanisms from.
Well, I guess what I mean is that you just had a good example of an even-keeled, level-headed person around you at some point. And I think
all points.
Yeah. So, for example, like there might be students in our buildings that they don't, again, somebody stepped on their shoes or somebody pushed them in line, or it might have been an accident, or maybe somebody said something, but they don't know, like all they know is to physically or verbally lash out at someone who did that. And then you have that student's parent come up to the building because now their child is suspended. And you have that student's parent come up to the building and they do the same thing to the principal, or they do the same thing to the teacher. So now you have your parent in the school causing a scene, raising their voice. And then you, in your mind, you're like, 1 + 1 is 2. Gotcha.
Why do you think that I went to public school? I went to public school in the hood, and I don't know where that separation came from, where all of a sudden you had, at least in my experience, the teachers and educators working with the parents and the parents working with them, and all that too. It's almost like, you don't do this to my kid, or I'm coming to you. And the teachers are in this weird position where I can't do nothing to this kid. So I feel like they get stuck in this position where, like, I almost have to let this kid fail, because if I come in, I'm going to get checked by the parent for not doing what they would probably do.
Right.
Where did that happen? Or do you think it happened? I guess that's not a definitive answer to that.
I don't know where that happened, but as as a person who's kind of seen some of the economic and cultural and societal changes over the last 10, 12 years, things have really changed for our families that live in poverty.
Like what?
I feel like there's more people. There's a higher percentage of people who might be living in poverty, or they're just more present now. And maybe they're more present because now I'm working with them, over the past, 10, 12 years. But I feel like, I don't know, and I could be wrong in saying this, but I feel like the poor people are becoming more poor, and their stressors are becoming more, they're just there now. There's more stressors for these families.
And when you say stressor, what do you mean?
Like the lack of money, the lack of being able to find a job, or lack of employment. They need more assistance. They might have too many children to take care of. Access to housing, that just some of the basic things that maybe you and I don't have to worry about. Then you have these families that do, and I feel like there's more and more families in that position these days. And so then those parents are frustrated, and the last thing they want to hear is the teacher calling them about what their kid is doing, because meanwhile she's trying to figure out how she's going to get housing, or trying to figure out where they're going to sleep tonight. And so I just feel like their frustrations come a lot quicker. And I just, that's what I think, that these families are frustrated, the parents are frustrated, they're at their wits' end, and this is the last thing they really want to have to deal with.
Do the people or the kids, is there any, if I could ask the demo of the kids that you work with, what would be the rough ratio, rough percentage of, different races
that I work with?
Yeah.
I would have to say there's probably, I think there's a pretty even split between the African American students and then Hispanic students, and then below them would be white students.
And you're an in-house psychologist for the school?
Correct.
Is that something that is in every school, or okay?
Should be in every school.
I'm learning about. I didn't even know it was a thing. Personally,
it's a thing.
So I don't. The psychologist in my school was Mr. Logan, the dean, who came in with the paddle, making everyone act right. So, do you, in your experience, do you see any particular difference in how your troubled black kids are versus the troubled white kids that you deal with, or minorities versus the white kids?
Honestly, that would be no. Because I believe that a lot of what I deal with, and the way behavior manifests itself, or the way parents parent their children, is correlated with their socioeconomic status. So any story I could tell you, any experience, if I'm not sharing with you what race that student is, quite honestly, it could be an African American kid, a Mexican kid, or a white kid, based on the demographics of students and families that I work for.
So, man, I'm just trying to echo what you just said to me. So basically, the depending on maybe the household income level is can reflect the behavior pattern of
right.
kids.
And I'm not drawing a correlation between household income level and bad behavior. What I'm saying is just that in my building, or in the buildings I've worked with, quite honestly, the white kid's going to act out just as much as the black kid if they're having some of the same issues. And the parent is potentially going to respond the same way. because it's just because ultimately it's about a lack of resources. It's about a lack of parenting. And it's not a lack of parenting in a bad way. Some of these parents just don't know what else to do.
Right.
Their best walks through our doors every morning, and they're doing the best they can do. They're only working with what they were given from their parents. And so, I mean, the cycle becomes very clear when you work with students and families instead of just like an isolated adult in a psychologist's office, in a storefront psychologist, office.
Is the mental health the experiences of the I guess the behaviors, are those behaviors learned, or would you say inherited?
No, the nature nurture question.
Well, I'm asking that because just in the way that they may choose to act out.
Now, there are some students that make the choice to act out, to break the rules. And there are some students who they're just very impulsive beings. And, they 0 to 100, they go from A to Z. I mean, it just goes real quick.
Well,
and some of that can be learned. But then some of it is truly impulsive. Because you have people who need to go to anger management. We know that as adults, that there are people who have to, go to 6, 8, 12 weeks of anger management. So that part of it is real. But then there are some kids who just blatantly choose to act out.
How do you determine a kid that is acting out as this is a temporary thing? If we can adjust some lifestyle things, he'll act right or behave better, versus a kid who we need to start looking at, some tests, some things that need some long-term work.
Right. Usually that's kind of where someone like me or maybe the school social worker or someone can kind of step in. And it's a very, I would say it's somewhat of an experiment. It's a very loose experiment. It's not a lab, experiment, because the school setting is not, you can't control a lot of variables there. So we typically would try to, sit down and talk with the kid, talk with the teacher, try to figure out what the root cause here is, what triggers the student, where it usually where the behavior is taking place. Is it structured, unstructured? Is it during a particular academic instruction time? And then sometimes we set up behavior plans and we offer the student a reinforcer. If they respond well to the reinforcer, then it's very possible that this behavior can be modified and changed. But if you're offering reinforcers to the kid and they're still, continuing to act out, and you up the reinforcer or you make it bigger and better, and they still can't seem to, modify their behavior, then that might be a situation where there could potentially be something more going on.
Now, when you say enforcer, what is an example of that?
Like, well, in a school setting, your reinforcers are usually computer time. You offer them a reward for making it to a certain point in the day without displaying that undesirable behavior. So undesirable behavior could be, I don't know, cussing at your teacher or leaving without permission. We could, teach them how to deal with their anger, deal with conflict. And then when that opportunity arises, if they respond appropriately in a socially acceptable way by not throwing a chair and walking out of the room, then, there's a reward. And I don't want to make it sound like we bribe kids all day long. But sometimes if we understand that humans function off of gaining a reward, I love what I do, but I like my paycheck.
Well, that's the reward. That's the
that's
reinforcer.
My reward. Yeah, that's the reinforcer. And so at times we offer that to students, and that's a way of getting them to be ready to learn, because in the school setting, that's what they're there for, is to learn. And so I don't want it to come across as if we bribe students, but we do offer rewards to kids. We offer free time, a homework pass, time with the preferred adult. We do offer those things.
Now, how does that adjust differently in the higher grades? Because some of what you're saying, I can see that for K6, K7, 8, but once you get in high school, that's a whole different developmental track.
Absolutely. And it becomes very difficult because if no one has helped that student prior to being a freshman or a sophomore, their behavior is very much learned by that point. And it's difficult to get them off of that track. I've worked with high school students who just throw their hands in the air because they see no reason to change their behavior. And it's very difficult to convince a senior who has 5 credits and a probation officer that they can't do these things in a school setting. And so when you get to the secondary level, meaning like high school, it does become a little more tricky. And I do not proclaim to have all the answers for students in high school that need, help with their behavior.
I know what they need.
Okay.
They need Joe Clark, Lean on Me, Morgan Freeman, come in there and start making them sing songs. Tell them to jump off the building. No, yeah, with high schoolers at least, how, like you said, though, a lot of it is, the behavior. How do we really? I don't know, because I know the goal is to get it as early as possible. Mm-hmm. But where do you think that point is where they're almost at a point of no return? I know it sounds sad to give up on the kid, but when does it really get tougher?
When you've tried everything, and as educators, I don't know if people underestimate, don't understand, yet haven't been in a public school setting, but I would say most educators give their all to their kids, especially the ones that are struggling. And it is very hard to give up on a kid.
Especially if you see them every day.
Yeah, you see them every day, and you want what's best for them, and there are sparks of hope with some students. And sometimes I find that maybe it's time for me to take myself out of the equation and ask someone else to step in. So, asking maybe the social worker, okay, me and so, we're not, he or she's not feeling me right now anymore. Can you come in? And usually that person can be a novel person to that student. So from my perspective, I don't want to think of it as giving up. I want to try a different approach, which might require me to fall back and step out of the equation. I know I talked to a student one time over and over and over, and he was a senior in high school, and I just, talked to him about his choices, and a lot of conversations had with that kid. And then one day, I think I told him, I was like, next thing that's going to happen is you will be arrested at school. Like, come on, help me help you. And
Jeez.
Probably a week later, he was arrested at school. And that was the last I saw of him, just walking out of the school doors in handcuffs.
Do you think that scared straight stuff works? No?
No.
Why?
I think it's glamorized for television. I don't think that works. Because I think that kind of thing only works for people who know better and who want to do better. Had someone taken me to jail, during my years of questionable choices,
Oh man.
I would have been scared straight. But I don't think it works for anyone who's determined. And I feel like, and of course, we've only seen it on TV. I think those kids appear to be determined to continue down the path they're on. But I think it will work for someone, like me. Like for me, getting my name written on the board in grade school was traumatic. I wanted to know how to get it off.
I took names. I used to write it on the board like you in trouble.
Oh, that was you.
Nah, and then you wait, erase it. I was just playing.
Yeah, like, and then you get a check mark beside your name. That's the worst. But that doesn't work for the impulsive, emotional, needy kid. It doesn't work for that kid.
How do you know the difference? Well, we kind of talked about it, but so when you see the kid that is, here's a question. What's the difference between a kid that is sad versus a kid that's depressed?
Okay. And it can be kind of tricky, especially at the age, again, elementary, middle, high, because there's so much going on developmentally, especially when you get to middle and high school. There's puberty and there's hormones. And typically, if a student or if a kid is depressed, it's going to look a lot different than what we believe the popular, the popular definition of depressed. That it's going to look a lot different for a 15 or 16-year-old. There are some people or students who will present with like your typical depressed behavior, but then there's others that won't. And so that makes it difficult. And you talk to the kids and they tell you, some of them will talk to you, some of them will not. Some things, I think when someone's sad, it can be more circumstantial. Something's happened and they're sad. Depressed is more of a pervasive across all settings all the time. They're presenting with these particular behaviors.
How do you, as adults, we try to look at, I don't want to get into that because that's going to go down the wrong rabbit hole. So when I grew up, we had people in the neighborhood that we found names for. Crazy Carl. None of these gonna make sense, so I'm just gonna leave it at Crazy Carl. And he had legit issues, but in some form, or you talk about people who got the crazy check. But what is it about? And I don't know any different because I didn't grow up in white neighborhoods or other neighborhoods other than minority and urban environments. But it feels like it's one of those things that we recognize when we see it, but don't do a lot about it. Mm-hmm. In your experience, why do you think that is the case? Or why do you think that's a thing?
That we see Crazy Carl and just
we see Crazy
Carl,
coin
him as such, and don't really empathize with him, or
he kind of becomes a neighborhood character, but no one that we try to help even, we're kids making fun of him. No adult steps in and goes, "Hey, leave Carl alone. He has this." Like no one sits down and goes, "Okay, this is what Carl has," mm-hmm. and anyone can get, like, no one sits and educates us on that. What, as far as you can tell, why do you think that is?
Well, if you're speaking more to, the African American community and these urban settings, then it's very possible that we kind of lump crazy together. we don't recognize that there could be other things, like you said, that, hey, everyone, let's sit down, let's talk about, you know, what Carl might have. We just look at it and we say he's crazy and we just keep walking. And I think it's because some of us don't have the background knowledge to know what's really wrong, you know, or to even find the resource to tell it, you know, or, you know, and then Carl's mama don't want you asking her what does he have or what went wrong, or, you know,
Right.
so there's this idea that all kind of this crazy is just lumped together. And then nobody really wants to ask, but then also no one has the resources or knows where to go to figure out, you know, to Google, you know, what's wrong with Carl.
We asked Jeeves when I was growing up, but I
forgot about that. I forgot about that.
There was no Google.
Wow.
Well, so I mean, but there was a lot of kids that, or Carl was old. He cowboy walked around in basketball shorts and cowboy boots, and he actually rode a horse around, and he had an issue. And I almost think that horse was a part of the thing that kept him, I hate to use the word sane, but I think that was it.
Very possible.
But is dealing with something like that a part of that coping mechanism, or just we just ignore it? Like, is ignoring it the coping mechanism, or ignoring it the problem?
Maybe a little bit of both. I think that sometimes it's difficult for us to accept that we might have a disorder. It's easier to label it as crazy than it is to say that's autism, that's schizophrenia, that's you know, bipolar. It's easier to just say it's crazy than to put a label on it. Because then when we start labeling things, now we have a mental illness. Now we have some sort of disability or disorder, and that typically doesn't resonate well in the kind of neighborhoods I feel like you're describing.
Is there and I'm gonna say this in the broadest way possible, a phobia of being labeled, or having to accept having a mental illness, in the type of neighborhood I am talking about?
I think there is. I think there's I think there's a resistance to accepting that, and to accepting that it exists for us. I think there's a resistance there.
So there is a thought that I have about the use of the term, or what in America at least we could qualify someone as mental illness. I'm gonna see if I can navigate through this. So we'll say white person shoots up a church. It's almost like it's accepted that he has a mental illness. He has a problem. We even work on, fuck it. The Batman shooter that shot the movie theater up. We worked on him, looked at him, mental illness situation. Was it John Lee Malvo or something? John Malvo, the Washington D.C. sniper.
Oh yeah, that's been a while.
Yeah, I'm with it. He's a sniper. He's a killer. He's a animal. Whatever. A religious, was a Muslim jihadist. He goes strap on bombs and all this, walks into a thing, and he blows the place up. He's a terrorist. It feels like we only allow for the, and I don't know if we allow for this one group to be classified mentally ill, or if we're just willing to give the benefit of the doubt that for them to do this, there must be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, a guy who fashions a caprice into a hunting ground or a hunting vehicle, or a person who puts on many bumps, all those sound like mental problems to me. Mm-hmm. Just, I mean, if you could take all that, what is that? Why is that okay? Why don't even we go, no, that person's crazy? A black person does what? Did we just had a black dude do something just now?
The guy went to the school and
no, the guy who shot up all, well, I mean, that happened with the black dude that shot up all these people because of his girlfriend.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
Yeah, same thing I said.
Steve
Stevens. Like, why don't we go, he's crazy? I hate to say crazy, but catch all, he's crazy.
Why don't we say that?
Yeah, why don't we just go, instead of saying, well, I guess, I mean, I said he's crazy. I think he's crazy, but or he has mental issues. I don't want to say crazy doing this thing, so I'm gonna say mental health problem. Mm-hmm. What makes it so hard to even go to start going that route, going that direction for someone that does something like that?
What are you asking, from our community perspective or from the media perspective?
We'll go community. Okay,
because I don't want to talk about what the media does, because unfortunately we have a difficult time controlling how they present us and others. So
true. They call that a narrative.
Absolutely. So when this incident happened on Easter, this Steve Stevens thing, that's what happened on Easter Sunday. A lot of what I read was that most people did not believe the mental illness plea. They believed that he was a sick person, that he was crazy, and I didn't read about a lot of empathy for what this person may have been through. Now, on the video, he was talking about how this has been going on for a long time. He called his mom, he called his girlfriend, and was, from my perspective, begging someone to stop him, even before he began this episode. But there was not a lot of empathy or understanding, and I know it makes it very difficult to split that hair when you have someone who's so far gone, logs onto Facebook Live and shoots an innocent man on Easter Sunday. That it's very difficult to look at that and first think, oh, I wonder if he has a mental illness, because that's not what comes to mind.
Yeah, but again, the Batman shooter they jumped to that fairly quickly. Not that he's an animal, not that he's this. Fairly quickly, he was he must have issues. The deal with the shooting in the school with all those little kids that made Obama cry, like when it's these situations, like, well, maybe he has a mental, like, no, they don't go, oh, maybe he's a terrorist. It's like, no, maybe there's a mental. They start to want to work that out first. When across the board, to me, we should figure out if any of these people have mental illness issues, just because I think it's the right thing to do. Steve Stevens, I mean, did he get arrested?
He killed himself.
Well, see, we don't get that far. So, I mean, well, it brings us to suicide. I don't like it. That's really what comes. I don't like the fact that the mental. I feel like the mental illness play only happens one direction. But here's my feeling. I think we, being the black community, urban community, needs to start advocating for that.
Mm-hmm.
That we start to look at some of our instances of violence or whatever it is as some degree of mental health
That's
acknowledgement or something.
Right.
Because if we don't, every time something happens, it's going to be treated like, no, he knew better.
Mm-hmm.
He could have made other decisions. Even the Steve Stevens, like the fact, I mean, he's saying right from off what he's saying, maybe he knows better, but maybe his action is more compulsive than just, you know what, I'm just going to start shooting people.
Well, I agree, you know, with your statement that
that's from a professional.
that we need to bring more light to the mental health in our community and what that can look like if it's not addressed. I agree with you 100%, and I'm sure there are other professionals out there that
where do we
with
start?
You. I think we have to define for the community what is a mental illness. Like, what does that look like? How does it feel? And then like where you can go to get help. But I think number one is, what is a mental illness? Because for so long, just like you said, they know better. I mean, that's what's said in families and communities and schools and houses. They know better. When maybe they don't know better. That's always an assumption we have to make in the school setting, is maybe they don't know. Maybe you need to teach them, you know, how to behave in a certain situation. But a lot of people don't know what a mental illness is or looks like, or, you know, they know some of the popular labels, but they don't know what those symptoms look like.
Now, if I asked a few of those, could you list some early detection symptoms where at least a start for someone to say, okay, that's more than just sad, or that's just more than anger? Could you or do you, is that more of an individual thing, or could you give people a place to start?
I mean, there's literally a book full of diagnostic
oh man, I'm trying to keep it professional. I almost said a really awful line right there.
There's a book, you know, and it's called the DSM. It's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, and it has every, you know, psychological disorder listed, along with, you know, sub areas of that disorder and the criteria, the symptoms, you know, that you have to have and for how long. It's a great read.
Let's do some cliff notes, because for the people who don't read, it ain't gonna go get this. I'm pretty sure
they're expensive. There's a pocket version, but I mean, the only people who usually have this are psychologists, therapists, counselors, things of that nature. No one just has it sitting on their bookshelf at home for fun.
She said that because I looked at my little books here. All right, so if you can just write, I mean, not to be exact, and we won't qualify this as information from a medical professional.
Yes, please don't.
We just gonna say this is just Brandi speaking because she's not at work. Where should a person start to look? What is a clear sign or a decent starter sign of someone that deals, or someone, or a child that's dealing with OCD?
OCD. Oh, that's a good one. OCD is, it looks like OCD. Let's start with obsessive compulsive disorder. That's what the OCD stands for, and a lot of it is this obsessive, repeated, ritualistic behavior, and it could be someone who always needs things to be clean and in their place and in line and aligned with, you know, pictures on the wall or books on the table, and someone who always has to make sure the door is locked and they will go back. an obsessive amount of times to make sure they locked the door when everyone around them is telling them, hey, yeah, when we left, you locked the door, but they will come back, and by obsessive, I mean 15, 20 times. They'll stand there, they'll lock the door, they'll make sure it's locked, they'll see it's locked, and then they'll unlock it and lock it again to make sure it's locked.
That just made me uncomfortable.
People who, excessive hand washing, people who wash their hands constantly till their skin cracks, knuckles bleed, people who are checking to make sure certain things are turned off. I mean, and those are just some of the behaviors that might be like your everyday life that. But then what I want to really highlight is that any disorder, be it OCD, depression, some people are like that. I have friends that tell me I'm OCD because my closet is organized by colors, or there's a difference between people who are organized and people who truly, meet symptom criteria for OCD. And the most glaring thing is it means you can't have a normal life. You're late to work. You're late to events. You can't leave your house. You can't, it's pervasive across all settings of your life, and it's negatively affecting the way that you do life. And that's with any disorder or any disability. And so OCD isn't just, again, your friend who takes off her shoes at the door every day. It's someone who can't get past these ritualistic behaviors to even just live.
Now, I would add on to that, but I would go on a tangent too. We'll say that for another episode. What about ADD, ADHD?
Oh, that's a very difficult one for me because, right offhand, I will tell you that I don't believe in it. I don't believe there is such thing as ADHD. But then, as a professional, I've had to accept it because I can't say that.
You said it.
I just said it. Between the hours of 9 and 4 on Monday through Friday, I can't say that. Now,
are those two separate things, or?
ADHD. It's really written as attention deficit / hyperactive disorder. So there, again, are kind of subtypes. So you can have attention deficit disorder, or like you can have this hyperactive category. So there's a deficit, and then there's this hyperactive, person with ants in their pants all the time. So after I say I don't believe in it, and then I have to accept it, and then I say, absolutely, I do not believe it's as prevalent as it's diagnosed.
I see that I can give. I would probably have to agree because I do have a friend that, as long as I've known them, now it's weird. It's a weird thing. I'll be honest, because that was one of those things where it's like, just whoop your kids, he'd be all right. But he. They give, and I'm talking in the 2000s, and before everyone
had it.
everything. But he was taking Ritalin before I knew what that was about, and he was it was literally two different people.
Right.
If he wasn't on it, he's everywhere. Right. Now, I'm not gonna put his name out there. He'll probably be on the show at some point because he's an amazing artist. But now I don't know, and I don't even think that he even still takes the medication as it's a part of his creative thing. Like this whatever that hyper thing is that he had is just a part of what makes him super creative. He was creative then, but now he's like somewhat superstar. You can see him; he's on a bunch of commercials. So that's all I'm gonna say.
Okay.
All right, so yeah, but like you said, I mean, even with OCD, everyone got it now. What about anxiety? What would be some clear things on that?
Anxiety is one of those things that come. There's typically a physiological response, so there's something going on with your body in but there are also other behaviors that come with it too. So someone who has anxiety problems, you know, some of those popular phobias, you know, trickle down are the trickle down from anxiety. So people who are, you know,
spiders.
Well, I don't know that that's in the DSM, but yes.
Arachnophobia.
Arachnophobia. I don't know if that's in there. But
Oh,
like,
man.
agoraphobia is in there.
That's
people,
the one that's going outside.
Yeah, people don't like to be in social settings or
Me
with a lot
either.
of people.
I don't like it either.
There's like claustrophobia. That is absolutely 100% me. I don't do enclosed spaces very well.
Oh, she not liking this then.
No. I mean, like airplanes, elevators, back seats of like two-door cars. I will swear to you I'm going to die and run out of air in those spaces. So anxiety, you know, comes down to be some of those phobias, but again, you have the physiological response of, you know, your heart racing, sweating, palms, you know, getting sweaty. And regardless of what phobia you may or may not have, you might feel like things are closing in on you.
Mm-hmm.
But anxiety is real. Anxiety is it's like you care about everything way too much. And so,
now, would anxiety be a thing or more of a response?
no, you can create it yourself in your brain.
Okay.
So it's not. It can be a response because it again with the phobias, it can be a response to social settings. It could be a response to enclosed spaces, but there is such thing as just kind of a generalized anxiety disorder where it is just your brain is taking over and it just perseverates and it just doesn't stop.
What about bipolar?
This is a really interesting one because I feel like this one, I think it can be overused or misused. Bipolar is not the person who is happy right now and sad in an hour.
Okay, I'm not bipolar.
Okay.
Good. All right.
Yeah, okay, you're cleared. But the way the DSM describes bipolar is it's a very cyclical disorder, and that you go into these depressive stages, and it could be for weeks, it could be for months, and then you come out of that, and whether or not your moods are regulated by medication, but typically you come out of that and then you might cycle back up, and for a couple weeks or months you appear to be normal, but then that's nothing but you working back into that manic phase. And that manic phase looks like it can look like your behavior is out of control. People who, there's lots of different things that happen or that can happen in the manic phase. It can manifest itself differently. Sexual promiscuity, shopping, not sleeping, constantly talking. So that manic can just be nonstop in any of those behaviors. But then your depressive state looks more like depression.
So manic isn't always going to be rage. It's just
no, it's just this nonstop kind of, it can be sometimes reckless behavior. Again, like I said, the sexual promiscuity, spending money, and you may end up spending money you don't have, or running up a credit card, buying lots of things that you do not need.
that's a lot of people. I just bought some. I'm trying not to curse on it now. Depression.
This is a tough one because, like you asked earlier, you know, there's sadness and there's depression, but I feel like depression, it lasts a lot longer. It feels like more of a fight. You're hopeless. You don't feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You feel like you just are existing. You don't have any hope for your future. And it just feels like a very dark place.
How because you mentioned this in bipolar in terms of this I think you said cyclical experience. It's I hate to say it, but it sounds like bipolar would be the worst of all of them because it basically puts everything in a Pandora's box, and I don't know how a person survive out of
It's
that.
much more difficult to regulate, especially if if you go to get the help and you're identified as such. It's much more difficult to regulate because your moods are in this. They're constantly changing, and not constantly, but you've got to wait for the next cycle. So say, you go and reach out for help when you're in your depressed phase. Well, then that mental health professional is kind of got to wait around to see what that manic phase looks like for you and then how much it needs to be dialed back. And so it's very difficult to regulate with medication. And I'm not always a proponent of medication, so I hate to say that, but typically people with bipolar, that's one of the things that helps them in addition to therapy, obviously. But you're right, it's a Pandora's box, and someone's going to have to see you in all of those phases to figure out what medication works best, what levels, what dosage work best for you.
All right, so now we're gonna kind of transition and before we finish the episode, and we'll just talk a little bit about. So, in the episode I had with my friend Erin Neely, hair and makeup supervisor for Sweat on Broadway, she brought up something, and then you kind of affirmed that earlier in the conversation about the kids is that I maybe in some of the conversation we had today, I was able to kind of make a little bit more sense where I feel like Black people have this thing with dealing with mental health, and it's more of a resource thing, but part of the lack of resource is the income part of it, which makes it a wide spectrum, I guess, because it doesn't just put it on Black people. It puts it on kind of like you said, a socio-economic issue. How do we get that information or resources to lower income families to learn how to deal with the potential for mental illness in their family or their kids? Where do we start?
Because I work in a school setting, I always encourage parents to talk to the psychologist in the building, the counselor, or the social worker. Those three people have so many resources for parents. And again, I kind of say that in the same breath as, oh my gosh, we do so much in a school setting, but we have resources and we know places in the community, we know people in the community, and we know about places that offer services on a sliding income scale or places that don't require payment at all. So I would absolutely start at your kid's school. And quite honestly, even if it's not for your kid, even if it's for you as a parent, I would absolutely encourage you to go there because it's a lot. To me, it would be easier to go to school than if you go to church. If you're involved at a church, I think some people, there's such a stigma about mental health and mental illness in the church. I think we're turning a corner on that. I hope we are. But I don't know. I would say go to your church or go to your child's school because there are people inside that school building that have a ton of resources.
And when you bring up stigma, I also venture into thinking about how do we get the parents also away from the fear of having a child with mental health issues? where do we do? Because the thing is, to get a parent to a place to talk to a counselor or a psychologist in a school, you also have to get away from the fear that my kid is crazy. How do we help them do that as well?
That's a long road, and you have to have good people in your buildings that know how to create relationships with parents and make them feel comfortable with sharing some of those fears with you. You have to be able to ask the right questions in the right way as the professional on the other end. You have to be able to read between the lines with some parents and reassure them that what we're doing as professionals in a school building is our job, or we don't get any satisfaction out of quote unquote labeling a kid crazy. That's not what we're in the business of. We are in the business of helping your student and your child be successful in a school setting so that they can learn to be fully functioning, contributing adults. And so you really have to spin that, and finesse the parent that way, because a lot of them are very resistant. And you have to help them know what you're there for, and it's not to label their kid as crazy.
I just like that you said the word finesse. That's like one of my favorite words ever. Well, of my young millennial life. I like using the word finesse. What resources can you point people to in terms of learning a lot more? I know you mentioned the DSM. Are there any recommended reading that you would think, or maybe a documentary or YouTube or whatever that you think would be a good direction to send people?
I would say, we all have the internet in our hands, with our cell phones. And I was going to try and look up a documentary.
Hold on. You gotta get up on that mic. There you go. You was
I'm
trying
sorry.
to do what?
I was looking up a documentary that I listened to on my way here today, and I don't really remember the name of it, but I know that my search
Go on, look
on
it up.
YouTube.
I can talk. I'm good at it. Well, while she looks that up.
Okay. Well, I was gonna give another, like I said, the internet is in our hands. There is the National Alliance for Mental Illness. That's a website, NAMI.org, and there's a lot of information there, and it breaks it down by special population. So there's information on that website about all sorts of demographics that you can look up. The documentary that I watched earlier, it's called Outside the House, a mental health film. It is a little bit lengthy. It's an hour and 20 minutes, but I
think that's on Netflix.
Is it?
I don't know. If it's on YouTube, it probably ain't on Netflix.
No. Well, anyway, Outside the House, a Black mental health film, and it had a lot of just real people talking about their own experience with mental health and how they fought it for so long, and then finally came to grips with seeking help. So and each person's experience is very different. So it's possible that any person who might be struggling could watch that and find one of the 6 or 7 people interviewed that maybe their situation is similar.
Just before we get all the way out, substance abuse, is that a mental health issue, or is that just a part of the makeup of I'll give you my opinion.
Okay, go ahead.
And you can read this in my book, Wi-Fi Rock Bottom, something about meth. That's also that's a plug. You can get that on Amazon. I believe that addiction, in my opinion, most cases, is more about the routine than it is about the substance. I think the process is a thing. Like, because the highs for a lot of things are very temporary. Or most things are temporary. And I'm not discounting like narcotics, things that kind of play with the brain a little bit. But I think a lot of it is like going to find the drug, getting the drug, the ritualistic thing about it makes it there's a start to finish. You start it this way, and you get this reward from this routine that you do it the same way every time. Like when I know people who smoke, they like, I gotta find my lighter. They gotta find this one specific tool in order to really get it. They don't want to use your tool; they want their tool. And I feel like it's not so much the drug as it is just the routine. So I wonder how if maybe substance abuses play into that bipolar thing more than it is because they quit. We call that quitting time. You said it. Their cycle. There we go. They quit. They say I can quit anytime I want to, and they do quit, and they quit, and they quit, and they quit, and then they start again. Well, I just showed you I can quit whenever I feel like it. They go back to the same routines. That's just my opinion on substance abuse. But I was just reading that substance abuse is a mental health disorder. I didn't read the NA. What'd you call it? The DSM. So I don't know.
And you know what? I'm going to be part of being a professional is identifying what is not in your professional realm. And I will tell you that I do not know a ton about substance abuse and how that. I mean, I know, being addicted to alcohol is a bad thing, or being addicted to meth. All of those things are not good for you. However, I'm not like a substance abuse counselor, and I didn't get a lot of training in that. But I can see your spin or your perspective on how that just plays into a mental routine or a schema that someone needs to go through every single day or every couple of hours, and how that can kind of be imprinted into their brain that I need to do this. Right. It may not be about the taste of the alcohol or the effect of the alcohol or the nicotine or the high that I get from the drug, but it's routine, and we are humans, and we are creatures of habit. And so I get what you're saying on that.
Because alcohol, now I say this to my best friend all the time. I got a bottle of water right here. She got the fancy water. But like no one ever sits down and goes, give me a 24 pack or 12 pack of Coca-Cola, and we just gonna kill these Cokes tonight. Like you get about 2 Cokes in and you done. But when it comes to alcohol, it's like, no, we gonna kill. Like give me 3 more, give me 4 more, and it's a weird thing because there's no other thing that I know of that people consume other than drugs in a binge-like manner. Water, people, I know people drink a gallon of water a day. A day. They space that shit out. They don't just go, give me the whole gallon. Well, I guess some people do, but not a lot of people.
Right. No.
But with alcohol, I mean, I think it's the routine. I think any. This is my opinion, my non-medical professional opinion. It's a pretty goddamn good one though. Watch TV?
Not a lot, because you're gonna ask me something that I know nothing about.
TV?
My TV watching is ESPN and The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. That's about all I watch on television.
Netflix.
I watch some Netflix.
What you got on Netflix then?
That's
a television.
Okay, I'm a lover of documentaries. I will watch a documentary on just about anything. Mostly, if I see one on psychology or education or anything that's obviously my field, then I'll watch that. But
what's the last good one you watched on Netflix?
Well, it wasn't good. It was more disturbing than anything. It was Trophy Kids. It was about parents whose children play sports. Yeah, it was all sports. It was, and I don't mean disturbing. I say that sarcastically, but it was very eye-opening and some of the things that the parents said to the kids, that was disturbing. It just was it was heartbreaking.
In terms of was it like how they performed, or
just the pressure that the parents put on their kids to perform at such a high level, because the parents, of course, have these dreams for their kids, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there's a way to go about it. There's a healthy way to go about it, and in this case, it was not very healthy. There were 4 or 5 different stories going on in the documentary, but that's the last one I watched.
Well, I'm from Texas. There's a lot of people who gonna find ain't nothing wrong with working out a kid to be a superstar.
No, and I don't think there is either. But I think
do.
you can't be demeaning and condescending to your 8-year-old daughter.
Oh no,
that's what I mean. I mean, there was some very mean things said, and of course, well, all of the stories were fathers except for the one mother. But this is a dad talking to his daughter in a very demeaning and condescending way, and it's just it's hurtful to watch. It's almost painful to watch. And there was a dad that was really mean to his son playing football. I could clearly tell he had his own issues of not being able to fulfill his dream. But
before today, I was starting a documentary, and then I got busy. The Leaf Town. It
was a documentary.
It was a documentary on Netflix. Something Leaf. But basically, it's about a town that of nothing people. It has nothing to do with the subject, but it's a town where basically racist people were moving in.
Okay.
Something Leaf. I can't think of it. But yeah, all these people moving to, like, it was abandoned town. This one dude moved in, and he got other people that thought like him to move in. So there's a town that is just everyone in there, basically Klansmen. If I think of, I'm put it on the Facebook. People probably already listen to it, already know what it is, but I just can't think of it right now. I started it, didn't finish it because I had things to do. Now, you got to listen to music, because I heard that thing thumping when you drove out there. So what you listening to? What's in the playlist?
Well, right now it's actually Kendrick Lamar's new album. I'm trying to let it grow on me. So there's about 3 or 4 songs that I listen to consistently, but then, like I say, I kind of force myself to listen to the song before or after that song and see if I like it.
What are the 3 songs?
Well, Humble, Love, the XXX song, and DNA.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, that DNA is what
I really
got
like
me.
the DNA song. There's a message in that song, and I listen to it over and over and over because he's such a lyricist, in that there's actually a story and there's words, and it's not just repetitive. And so I try to listen to it because he's saying something, you know. You
said you're trying to figure it out?
It's not one of these simple songs, you know, where the chorus is the same, and, you know, and what I mean by that is it's just not repetitive. And I know he's saying something in that song, and I'm just trying to listen more because there's parts in there where, again, you know, he's rapping way too fast for me to catch it. So I try to listen to it over and over and over.
You know, I'm trying to keep it clean, so I ain't gonna recite any of the lines from it. But I just like the song DNA. I don't know if it's that. Have you seen the video?
I have.
That's probably why you think it's deeper than what it is. He probably just said some regular stuff.
No, I think he's speaking to what's in our DNA as Black people.
Yeah, yes.
And it's loyalty.
That's the line I don't want to.
It's
that's the line. It's a couple lines I don't want to say because it is like. It is I'm with you. I'm pretty sure it's deeper than it is.
Maybe that's what I want it to be. Maybe I want it to be deeper than it is.
Well, maybe. Maybe
I haven't even looked
me.
up the lyrics. I'm just trying to listen. Have you ever looked up the lyrics?
No, I can listen to the lyrics. He's saying them. I know what he's saying.
At some point, it just gets really fast. I
Yeah,
can't follow him.
yeah. You gotta listen faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like DNA. Well, I keep replaying the Loyalty song with Rihanna. I like that
I
song.
struggle with.
You struggle with it.
I struggle with.
You must don't
Rihanna
like
sometimes.
Rihanna.
I struggle with Rihanna.
All right, that's probably all it is because that's a good song.
I'll listen to it when I leave.
All right, so we got. Oh, I found it. The name of the documentary is called "Welcome to Leith." It's Netflix. It's 7 out of 10.
Leaf, as in like a leaf on a tree, or
Leith, Leith.
Oh, okay.
Welcome to Leith. Here we just hit this with a real quick synopsis. If it don't take me too long, come on, internets. Welcome to Leith. You'll know it when you see it on Netflix because there's a big red sign on it. Usually means Bloods or white supremacy. But when a noted white supremacist moves into their town, the residents of Leith, North Dakota, do what they can to prevent him from taking control of the municipality. I said it right the first time. So that's why I'm starting to watch. It seems really good, but I can kind of gravitate to. I either like to watch something that's racially driven or true crime. I like crime a lot. And I see how you look at me. Don't start trying to dissect me. It's just entertainment.
Understood.
Kinda. Well, I appreciate you coming on talking some of this mental health stuff. I think a lot of it is gonna be useful. I find it useful. I learned some things that I didn't know, especially with kids. And it's good to have that inside the school. I didn't even know that, you had. I thought they only put that in like trouble schools. So it's good to know that it's supposed to be or should be a thing across the board. And and also if you're a parent and you're curious if your kid has some psychological developmental issues, go to the school, go talk to them, and be open to the feedback. You ain't gotta agree,
absolutely,
but you gotta start to listen.
Let me say one thing. I would, as a parent, if you are genuinely concerned about your child, that you be open with the people that you speak with at the school about your child's experiences and things that they've been exposed to, because so often we as professionals are trying to piece together like, well, why would this be happening if the mom said everything's been normal? Or why would he respond this way to this situation if nothing's ever happened? And so we are spent trying to put together a puzzle that we don't have all the pieces to. And no one's going to cast judgment. No one's going to call Child Protective Services on you. We just want to make sure that we have all of the information to do what's best for your child.
I'm glad you mentioned the thing about Child Protective Services. I think that's part of it as well, that, to be, if there is some things going on in the house, such as maybe a divorce or maybe some things that get out of hand between siblings or something that you think, if my child is having an issue, they get sent to wherever, and they're a question, hey, what's going on? You want to talk to them? You say no, nothing, everything's fine. Well, you're not at the school because everything's fine. You're there because someone will say professional recognize that there is an issue that needs to be addressed. So being open to that dialogue and not being afraid that something's going to happen to you, you got to start the conversation, because in the end of the day, you want your child to develop well, have a good experience at school as well as at home, even though you may be struggling paying some bills. I guess lights are part of the bills, but you're struggling with different things that's going on in the home that carries on with the kid.
And many times we just want to get resources to the family. So if it's a matter of, if a kid comes to school and tells us there's no lights or there's no water, it's a matter of us trying to get you resources. We know of places that might pay your water bill or help you pay it or pay a percentage of something. We want to get you resources. Now, let me be clear that if there's a case where your child reports of abuse, that's not having water. Not having water and a child being abused are completely different things. So please do not abuse your children.
Yes.
But for the most part, we really just want to get resources to the family, because we know that once that student's basic needs are cared for, then they can come to us and they can learn. And so that's my soapbox about that.
And that was Brandi Newry.
Yes.
This is such a tough last name to say. School psychologist, mental health professional, who came and did this good hour and a half.
What?
As she complained about me doing an hour and a half before on the I'm Kinda Famous podcast. Remember to go to the Facebook page and engage in some of this conversation, and Twitter at Kinda Famous Pod, KINDA Famous Pod, POD. And like, share, subscribe, that whole deal. And we'll be back tomorrow with a new episode for Mental Health Awareness Week here in May, the Mental Health Awareness Month. And I think that's it. I struggle with ending shows, so come back tomorrow. New episode, I'm Kinda Famous podcast, Mental Health Awareness Week. Tell your mama I said hi.
So, in light of you being kind of famous,
Why the hell I'm kinda famous? Who the hell she know?